Welcome to the virtual Easter service of First Parish Church of Groton, Massachusetts. I am Reverend Aaliyah Kemmler, and I am so glad that you are here. Happy Easter. We are a community seeking to deepen spiritually, to take care of one another, and to be a blessing to this world. Unitarian Universalism is a faith for all, so whoever you are, whatever country you come from, whoever you love, whatever your abilities, challenges, or gifts, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome in this virtual but very real community. Special thanks today to our Director of Music Ministry, Sean McCann, for his beautiful piano playing before and after the service. I have just a couple of announcements for you. We do have the live chat feature active right now, and we'll keep it open for some time after the service ends. Members of our Welcoming All community are on the chat to welcome you. So please write in, let us know you are here, and if you have any joys or sorrows to share, I hope you will do that. Just be mindful that the chat is a public space while we are live. Come on over to Zoom after the service for coffee hour and a chance to see one another's faces, which is really good. The link is posted in the description box and it will be in the chat as well. I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to visit the church's Facebook page. You can sign up for our twice weekly church-wide messages by emailing welcoming@uugroton.org. And we have a new blog. It is called Suddenly at Home, First Parish Church of Groton, and it is already full of creative writing, poetry, reflections, and photographs about life during these times. You can find it at www.suddenlyathome.fpcog.org, and that link is also in the description box. Finally, the flowers today were given in gratitude for the many people who are putting themselves at risk to keep us all safe. Thank you to our local florist, Lavender in Groton, who created them and delivered them, and thank you to the church members who donated them. So now I'm going to ring the meditation bell 3 times, and I invite you to take some deep breaths, to breathe in peace, and to breathe out anxiety and fear. Whatever you are worried about, whatever weight you are holding right now, imagine setting it down. Imagine handing that over to me. I will hold it for you so you can rest for a little while. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we begin our services by lighting the chalice, which is the symbol of our faith. The chalice symbol was created by a Czech artist during the Second World War. He created it for the Unitarian Service Committee, whose members were helping to get Jews and other persecuted people out of Europe. It was created as a symbol of resistance to the powers of fear and destruction, and as a sign of resilience and hope. And we need that resilience and hope right now. These words are by Gretchen Haley with my adaptations, and so much gratitude to Gretchen for her poetry and her generosity. The first line of her poem, Roll Away the Stone, refers to the story of the very first Easter as told in the Gospels, when early in the morning, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome went to the tomb with spices to prepare Jesus's body for burial. They were worrying, and they had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" But when they got there, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. Gretchen Haley writes, "Roll away the stone of your hesitant heart. Let the light shine on all the sleeping shadows. Awaken to this day that offers itself to you and to all as a gift. Awaken to this beauty that persists, this chance that we might begin again, that even here we are finding our way to healing and hope, that even now we are changed by the breath and the heartbeat that connects us across these screens, by the recreation of this beloved community woven through with threads of tenderness and love." This is a new song we are learning to sing together. It calls us in. It holds us in love. And before long, it will send us back out into this world. And so we will light the chalice on this Easter morning in celebration of that song of life that holds us in love and tells us that love does have the final word. So my assistant is going to bring over the chalice for me. So now let's sing together Spirit of Life by Carolyn McDade. As is our tradition, we sing it first in Spanish, translated by Lilia Cuervo and Ervin Barrios, and then in English. There is a link to the words in the description box and in the chat, I hope. But I'm going to hold up the words here in case that is easier, and I hope that you will sing with me so that I'm not singing alone over the internet. Here, I'll hold it up here. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí y a corazón, cántale tu compasión. Sopla el volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arriágame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí. Ben a me, Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. So now I'd like to talk to the children for a moment, and the adults can listen too. So on Easter, we celebrate two things. One thing we are celebrating is spring and all the new life that is coming into the world right now. All the flowers are starting to come up out of the ground, and the yellow forsythia bushes are blooming. and all the buds are out on the trees, and all of this is giving a lot of the grown-ups bad allergies, but we are glad anyway. I wonder if any of you hunted for eggs in your yards this morning, or maybe you will later today. Eggs are another sign of spring, the real ones, of course, because birds are building their nests and laying their eggs, and a lot of other animals are having their babies too. So we're celebrating spring and all of the new life that comes with it. Easter is also a time to celebrate a man who lived over 2,000 years ago named Jesus. Jesus was a teacher, but he didn't teach in school. He walked around talking to people, and everywhere he went, people gathered to listen to him and to learn from him. And Jesus told stories to people because he knew that stories are the best way to learn. And sometimes he said things that people didn't understand unless they really, really thought about it. Mostly, he talked about how we need to love each other and about how every single person matters. Now, after Jesus died, his friends were really sad and they missed him. But they loved him so much that they didn't stop loving him, and they remembered him, and they remembered all the things he told them, and they tried to be good to each other like he taught them. And they realized that the love that they felt didn't go away. The love stayed with them, which is one of the things that Jesus taught them. So at Easter, we celebrate new life, and we celebrate the way that love doesn't go away. And these are both really important things. So I have a story for you, and I think it's the kind of story that Jesus might have told. It's called The Other Way to Listen by Byrd, Baylor, and Peter Parnall. Here it is. I used to know an old man who could walk by any cornfield and hear the corn singing. Teach me, I'd say, when we passed on by. I never said a word while he was listening. Tell me how you learned to hear that corn. And he'd say, it takes a lot of practice. You can't be in a hurry. And I'd say, I have the time. He was so good at listening. Once he heard wildflower seeds burst open, beginning to grow underground. That's hard to do. He said he was just lucky to have been by himself up there in the canyon after a rain. He said it was the quietest place he'd ever been, and he'd stayed there long enough to understand the quiet. I said, I bet you were surprised when you heard those seeds. But he said no. I wasn't surprised at all. It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. And he smiled, remembering. Another time, he heard a rock kind of murmur good things to a lizard. We saw the lizard sunning on a rock. Of course we stopped. The old man said, I wonder how that lizard feels about the rock it's sitting on and how the rock feels about the lizard. He always asked himself hard questions that take a while to answer. We leaned against another rock. A long time passed, and then he said, did you hear that? They like each other fine. I said, I didn't hear a thing. He said, sometimes everything being right makes a kind of sound. Just like now, it wasn't much more than a good feeling that I heard from that old rock. Were you surprised to hear it? I asked. He said, not a bit. It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. I said, I wish I'd heard it too. He said he thought I might someday. He told me how a friend of his once heard a whole sky full of stars when she was 7. And later on, when she was 83, she heard a cactus blooming in the dark. At first, she didn't know what she was hearing. She found it by just following the sound. There were 20 flowers on one cactus, and they were all as white as the moon. The old man said, "Most people never hear those things at all." I said, "I wonder why." He said, "They just don't take the time that you need for something that important." I said, "I'll take the time, but first you have to teach me." He said, "I'd like to if I could, but the thing is, you have to learn it from the hills and ants and lizards and weeds and things like that. They do the teaching around here. Just give me a clue on how to start," I said. And he said, "Do this. Get to know one thing as well as you can. It should be something small. Don't start with a mountain. Don't start with the whole ocean. Start with one seed pod, or one dry weed, or one horned toad, or one handful of dirt, or one sandy wash." I said, "I'll take the sandy wash." He said he started with one tree. Every morning of his life when he was young, he climbed a cottonwood tree and sat there listening. He told me it was worth the time. He said trees are very honest, and they don't care much for fancy people. And he said he doesn't know if anything he ever did is as important as sitting in that tree. "Tell me everything you can," I said. He said, "Well, you have to respect that tree or hill or whatever it is you're with. Take a horned toad, for example. If you think you're better than the toad, you'll never hear its voice, even if you sit there in the sun forever." And he said, "Don't be ashamed to learn from bugs or sand or anything." I said, "I won't." He thought of one more thing. "It's good to walk with people, but sometimes go alone. That way you can always stop and listen at the right time." "I'll remember everything," I said, and I did, but nothing worked. I thought there must be something wrong with me because I only heard wind and quail and coyotes and doves, just the things that everyone could hear. I almost gave up trying. Of course, I still went walking in the hills. In fact, I used to sing to the hills a lot. I thought since they wouldn't sing to me, I'd just sing to them instead. The day I'm telling you about, I was singing, and the whole song was this: "Hello, hills, hello, hills, hello, hills, hello." That was after I had been away 5 days and I had missed those hills. I went out earlier than usual. You know how everything looks new at sunrise. Well, all those hills were looking new, and I was just walking where I always walk. But that morning, I kept thinking, here I am. And whatever way I happened to go, it was always right. I climbed the rocky side of the path. The rocky side's steeper, but I like it best. And anyway, that's where I found my 3 hawk feathers. I stopped at the top where I always stand, looking down. Hello, hills, hello, hills, hello, hills, hello. All I know is suddenly I wasn't the only one singing. The hills were singing too. I stopped. I didn't move for maybe an hour. I never listened so hard in my whole life. Of course, their kind of singing isn't loud. It isn't any sound you can explain. It isn't made with words. You couldn't write it down. All I can say is it came straight up from those dark, shiny lava rocks. It moved around like wind. It seemed to be the oldest sound in the world. All I can say is I was standing in the middle of that sound at 7 o'clock in the morning, just thinking, here I am, and thinking, listen, and not even being surprised. It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. The end. So I'm going to invite you now into a time of prayer and meditation and quiet. I will ring the meditation bell and ask you to take 3 gentle breaths. 1 breath for yourself, 1 breath for a loved one, and 1 breath for the world. Julia Hamilton writes this prayer. Spirit of hope, settle into our bones on this Easter morning. Remind us once again that the dawn light is never a gamble. If there was ever a sure bet, it is the sunrise. Even stones crumble, even grief changes and shifts. And death is a mystery that is certain but not solid. But hope is like the sunrise, eternal and bone bred within us. In these fearful moments, we can be forgiven if we stumble and doubt and deny. But still the sun rises and calls her children into bloom. Always, she says, always I will return. So let us rest for a moment in the certainty that the sun did rise today. The night ends and we turn our faces toward the light of morning. Let us hold in our minds and hearts all of the sorrows and fears and also all of the gratitude of this gathered people, knowing that we are not alone. We are held in the love of this community which exists across time and space and transcends all walls. And we are held in that larger love which holds us all. Let us pray for all who are sick, for all who are grieving, and for all who are in need. We pray for all who are risking their own safety and that of their loved ones in order to take care of others. For the essential workers, for first responders, for healthcare professionals, for the exhausted doctors and nurses and PAs and EMTs, for all who are keeping the grocery stores and drugstores open for us. And we hold in love and prayer these sorrows in our community this week. We pray for Jenny, whose beloved husband David died this week, and for all of Jenny and David's family and loved ones. For Molly and Mike's niece, who died this week, she was just 14, and we hold in love her parents, her brothers, and her sisters. For the family of Janine, who died this week. For Kathleen's cousin Tim and his wife, both of whom are sick. And for the staff at Badger Funeral Home, who are tending to the families of those who have died and who are working so hard and putting themselves at risk. We ask for strength and for healing for all. So let us breathe out fear and breathe in peace. We are a people of hope, and we will be strong and brave together. Amen. So I have just a couple of additional announcements. First, thank you to everyone who has donated to our food drive for Loaves and Fishes food pantry in Devens. At last count, we had collected just under $2,000, which is equal to 124 bags of food, which is wonderful. Please take a moment to go to the church website, www.uugroton.org, and to donate if you have not already. The pantry has closed temporarily, but they plan to open soon, and the need will be even greater when they do. In the meantime, the Groton Senior Center and Groton Dunstable School District have set up an emergency food pantry in 2 different locations. There are details on our church's webpage if you would like to help, and also if you are in need of food. Finally, your financial support of our church community is so important right now as we give each other hope and strength to get through these days. If you are able to make a donation to support the work of First Parish Church, we would be so grateful. Just go over to our website and click on the donate button. Thank you. The story of Easter starts with that empty tomb. 3 women who love Jesus arrive to get him ready for burial, this last tender thing they can do for him, and he isn't there. It isn't made clear in the Gospels, but the women who came to the tomb were putting themselves in danger. Jesus was a convicted political criminal, guilty of insurrection, who had just been put to death. The Roman authorities wanted to crush the movement that Jesus had led because they found it threatening, and the chief priests agreed with them. Jesus was trouble, and the people who followed him were too. That is why the disciple named Peter hid, afraid to admit he knew Jesus, afraid that he would be found guilty by association. But the women came anyway, an act of love and also courage. And instead of finding their beloved's body, they find an empty tomb and a strange messenger saying, "He is not here. He is risen." The story tells us they are terrified but also amazed. In their grief and confusion, we can imagine how maybe they felt the beginning of hope as they stood in that empty tomb. Hope that maybe their beloved teacher might somehow be alive. We don't know what happened on that first Easter morning, of course. The older I get, the less I try to make sense of it. I do believe that those we love who have died may be closer to us than we know, and in ways we cannot understand. So it is not so strange to me that the disciples powerfully sensed the presence of Jesus, maybe even saw him, or believed they did, felt they did, even after his death. So many of you have your own stories of how you have felt your loved ones nearby, especially soon after they have died. And even if we don't believe in any kind of afterlife, we know that our beloved dead are not just gone. We carry them with us in 1,000 different ways. We carry them with us in how we remember them, in how they shape our lives going forward, and how we carry on their traditions and cook their recipes and tell their stories long after they have died. Our loved ones don't just disappear. The love doesn't just disappear. And this to me is a kind of resurrection. For most Christians, the story of that empty tomb is at the heart of their faith. For them, resurrection means the literal rising of Jesus from the dead, the sign that Jesus was the Son of God come to earth to live among us. But there are other ways to understand resurrection. Some of us believe that whether or not Jesus literally rose from the dead, that is not the miracle. That is not the heart of the story. The heart of the story is his life and his radical, inclusive love, his valuing of those who were the most outcast and marginalized, his vision of this beloved community where all people belong to one another and where there is justice and tenderness and mercy and compassion for all. And the miracle is that we have held on to that message for over 2 centuries. I believe this is because we yearn for that kind of love. We yearn for that kind of mercy so deep in our bones that we will not give up our hope, our need for love and the forces of life to have the final say, for love and life to prevail. There is another kind of resurrection, and that is the kind of resurrection we need this year. It is resurrection as the power of love to create new beginnings, new possibilities where there were none. Resurrection as the power of love to bring us back from the places of fear and despair we find ourselves and our world in right now. Resurrection as the capacity to create more justice in broken places, more healing in people who feel broken and don't yet know that they are not broken, just hurting. Resurrection as the courage and persistence we are seeing all around us in the brave, ordinary people who get up every day and put on their face masks and go to work in nursing homes and residential schools and hospitals and supermarkets and homeless shelters to do what needs to be done so that the sick will be taken care of and the hungry fed. Resurrection as the 1,000 different ways people are finding to connect right now, to make art and music, which brings people hope. People are singing together from their different neighborhoods and cities. They're meditating together across the internet. They're putting up drawings of hearts and rainbows and teddy bears in their windows. Resurrection is that part of us that keeps moving through the doors of hope, even after great loss and sorrow. Resurrection is the part of us that does not give up, that returns to hope again and again. Resurrection is the amazing, beautiful resilience of ordinary people who find it within ourselves to choose life again and again in all sorts of ways. We get sober and we do it over and over, one day at a time. We come through depression or illness and we heal even if we cannot be cured. We survive grief and we are not the same, but we come through with our hearts broken wide open. We lose things we love, jobs, friends, relationships. Our trust gets betrayed, or we betray the trust of others, and still we love. Still we find the courage to risk, to hope. Right now we are living through a time we could not even have imagined 2 months ago. We are afraid to go to the grocery store. We are afraid for our loved ones who may be sick or vulnerable. Some of us are already grieving, and we all want this to be over, to see the light at the end of this long tunnel. But don't forget, the very first Easter was a lot like this. The disciples were scattered. They were afraid to go out for fear they would be recognized as followers of Jesus. They were grieving the death of their beloved leader. They were probably utterly lost, devastated. And that is when the word started to get out to them about the empty tomb. As Reverend Allison Lanza writes, the very first Easter was not in some crowded worship space with singing and praising. On the first Easter morning, the disciples were locked in their houses, alone in their homes. They dared to believe that hope was possible, that the long night was over, that morning had broken. Morning is coming for us too. I want you to go out of your house today and look at the signs of life all around you. Look closely, listen carefully. Maybe you will hear the world singing. It is a new song We are learning to sing together. It holds us in love. Love and life will prevail. Hold on to that. So go in peace, friends. Be a blessing to this world, and happy Easter.